I got the clout. We are live. According to the masses, let's just check this out from the interwebs. Welcome to the show. Welcome, folks. Live with Diamond, questions and answers, magnetic excursion, pole shift, and solar outburst. All your questions and answers will come true. Grand solar minimum much? So let's just put that to rest. All right, we're here live for your questions and answers after we just premiered the Tom Nelson interview. We did an update on Oppenheimer Ranch project. Please hit that thumbs up and let me know your questions. Frank Hodgson, Pangea 2 million years old event is now approaching. All right, whatever that means. Howdy, Diamond, sir, says Eric Court. Hi, Diamonds. Great to see you, as well as you, Kristen Adams. You've been busy. Jason Schmidt says, boom. Jerome Schlickler. I think I got that. Welcome to the show, bro. Diamond, what are your thoughts on the ground deformation of Taupo, which I've been told is toe paw? So get it right. Well, Jerome, I think that there is deformation there. There hasn't been an eruption, a major eruption, for 26,000 years. And it's boom time. That's my opinion. Okay, I'm scrolling through your comments now, through my StreamYard. Do ancient Lanky Bonneville and Lake Lohanten fill and dry with the catastrophe cycle? Aaron, I have no idea what that question is, so please reposit it, and maybe I'll answer it. Okay, how much of your garden did you lose to the early frost, and what would you do differently? According to Alan. Well, Alan, I think maybe some high tunnels. We didn't care about the crops we lost because we knew we would lose the crops. We only have a limited window. So if we were actually in a scenario where there was a grid down scenario and there was no electricity, we would be doing things differently. We'd have high tunnels all over the place. We'd be growing in abundance in our rigid greenhouses, and we would be setting up things differently. But currently we don't care. We have enough abundance that we've shared things. We know in the spring everything will boom, and we still have access to stores. So we tend to buy like our salads and things, from the normal organic section of the supermarket. So we don't have to worry about growing like much of our greenery, but I'm about to get a new camera. We've lost our camera fried during one of our podcasts where we were cutting wood. So I've been waiting for this new camera to get here. Our cell phone is corrupt, so we really can't do videos on that. So I'm going to be getting a new cell phone. We have got this is the old original here. Holy macaroni. This camera has been all over the country, and it's got like things shaking around inside of it. It doesn't autofocus anymore. So all of the videos, you could hear it from the last 3 years of videos we've been making from this camera here, Sony Handycam. New one's coming. It should be here in the next 24, 36 hours. Took a while to get one, but it's being shipped here. This one's been giving us problems for years on our podcast with like shaky, as I'm panning in and out with the zoom. It's been doing some pretty janky stuff. That's all I'll say. So it's done well. It's made thousands of videos, probably like 10,000. I'm going to say 5,000 videos came out of that camera. much of which we've had to erase from YouTube. So that's how we go there. All right, we already talked about that as being a non-question. All right, so we're scanning down here. Thank you, Victor Debs. Lovely month we're having, Dawn. Yes. Antonio Bachetti. Diamond, when do you think the sun is going to the downswing for the next minimum? Well, Bachetti, that's a lot to say. We still have 2 more years until solar maximum, 2025, and then we'll have the drop down. So the solar minimum before the next cycle 26, will be happening around 2030. And if you've watched a lot of our videos that we've recently been releasing on major solar outbursts, those will occur 2032 or 2031, and that'll be fun. Kristen Adams says 80 Fahrenheit in Central Texas. Feels strange. Yeah, it's going to be changing in the next 14 days, so heads up for your location, Kristen. Kenny Crowder, hey, Diamond, back before bed. Loved your last interview. Good evening, everyone. Stay safe. Thank you, Kenny. That was the interview with Tom Nelson. Check it out. Asfara made it. Tim Pool just ended for me, playing catch-up on 2x speed. How was the Tim Pool? I'm about to watch that before I go to Betty. Betty, bye. Asfara. All right, I'm just scrolling through. Aaron says, Diamond, does the Great Salt Lake, Utah, formerly known as Lake Bonneville, and the Pyramid Lake, Nevada, formerly known as Lake Lohantville, and dry with the catastrophe cycle? Well, still don't know what that question is, but both of those lakes occurred during the massive outwash from the cosmic impact scenario that occurred 12,900 years ago. It's actually 12,897, something like that. But the outwash in the Mississippi River Plain, the Bonneville outwash, the major outwash cycles were the end event for the glacier, the massive glacier that was up there during the last ice age. And that ended during the catastrophic event during the Younger Dryas. There were other outwash events that happened for about 4,000 or 5,000 years before the Younger Dryas, starting at the major warming event called the Bowling Allerod. So for several thousand years, there were huge events up in the Arctic and up in North America, specifically the Pacific Northwest, and those major glacial outwashes. A lot of that had to do with volcanic activity. Some of it had to do with impactors. But we're all, at this current time, reworking the numbers on the particular times of the outwashes. Randall Carlson does great work on these glacial outwash events, and he has even tours where you can go out with him and check out these things yourself. And Rex and I may be going out to the Geoglyph area that we just recently revealed thanks to the work of Dutch Sins. Not because of his earthquake work, because he happened to look at an earthquake and found these particular geoglyphs. So anyone who wants to go look who Dutch Sins is and what he's been doing for the last decade is feel free. We've provided links to his fraud in the earlier parts of the comments. So that's all we'll talk about him. Someone says, can you grow lettuce and greens presently in your greenhouse? Of course. If you have a rigid greenhouse, you can, well, as soon as we get our camera back up, we're growing Celtis. We've got some sweet potatoes left over from last year, and we have probably 20 pounds of cherry tomatoes in the other half of our greenhouse currently producing right now. So yes, you can grow all kinds of stuff all the way up in the Arctic during really low light seasons. And we'll show you that in a video as soon as possible. Marcia Perdinac says, Diamond, if you saw the sun just put out a very powerful X flare that would shortify the grid, what are the first 3 things you do? Well, I thank God, first of all, Marcia. I would run out and spend all the money I had in my bank account on comfort things, sugar, flour, oil, bullets and butter and other things I just want to have for the next year. Maybe I'd get 100 pounds of butter. Throw that in the freezer. And I would change the way I'm working. If you have a solar power system, you would be shutting off all the grid things. You'd be shutting off everything to your house. You'd be crossing your fingers. And then when the event passed, your Faraday cages and everywhere you stored your stuff, you'd be bringing that out because you would need to turn on your own local grid. If the grid was fried, I'd need to turn on my solar system. I need to turn on my backup solar, maybe my solar batteries or whatever I have. And you need to start to thinking in a different mindset. I would be thinking grid down scenario, blackout type stuff. And I would be just moving towards caveman stuff where I would be literally cooking my food outside on fire. I wouldn't be worrying about electricity. Why would you worry about creating electricity if you are in a future with no electricity? I don't think many people would be thinking that way. So we will be thinking about surviving now, producing food, increase food production. I don't think we'd be worried about our box freezer as much. But if we could keep that up and aligned with solar power and some of the batteries we have or not, if you have solar power directly, you could be running objects when the sun is out and powering them up, and then just they could go off at night and then the repower in the morning. So you could be keeping things frozen potentially with a high efficiency cooler or box freezer with just 12 hours of light, perhaps. This is all stuff we should be working on now to prove that it could work in the future. But in the future, we could be just working off of that narrative. Now, if the power goes out and the power is gone and you don't have a backup solar system, if you're grid tied, you're screwed. You don't have backup batteries. I mean, most of the solar running in houses do not provide for grid out. If the grid goes down, your solar goes down if you're grid tied. So these are terrible circumstances that we're going to be dealt in the near future. For many people, they thought that they would have maybe some power, but so that's my answer, Marcia, as trite as it was. Holly 13 says, should we be worried about living in lower elevation areas like 100 feet above sea level? Well, 100 feet above sea level is a terrible area to be living at any time, Holly. Lots of the mega tsunami data that we're getting in that have occurred during the Holocene have been 600-meter waves. So that's almost 2,000 feet. And that would rush inland for tens of miles. So if you're inland tens of miles, less than 1,000 or 2,000 feet of elevation, you're in mega tsunami's way. So you're not safe in any of those places. The entire state of Florida is a danger zone for mega tsunami. No one would escape. Everyone would perish. Any of the major cities, all the population, 80% of the population lives on major coastlines of rivers or oceans. And those people would be eliminated within 24 hours. If a mega tsunami were to occur from, let's say, an impactor that we couldn't see, it just came in, boom, hit the Atlantic. You're talking like 500 million dead in 24 hours. Asphera, magnetic reversal news, Diamond. Where is a will, there is a way. I live in an apartment complete. I still grow 5x tomato plants, chili peppers, and fresh greens. But probably cannabis as well. And just keep doing what you're doing. But in the event of a mega flare or a super flare that we see coming from the sun, get out of Dodge. Have a bug out plan. You can't stay in a major populated area and think that you're going to do well. Not at all. Rivers gone. Have you heard about the ocean under the crust, like 20 miles deep? It supposedly erupted like a giant geyser into space, creating ice meteors. Well, I have no idea what you're talking about, Rivers, but there is a huge reservoir of water beneath the crust. In fact, there is 2 or 3 times more water than is on the surface in our planet. And if that has a regulation mechanism where some of it comes out or in, we could have water world. That's true. But whatever you said makes no sense and is not true. There have been major eruptive events on Earth through the form of kimberlites. Kimberlite eruptions have not been seen in recent times. We've never witnessed one, but we have geologic evidence of these kimberlite eruptions. This is where all the diamonds are located. This is when mantle material gets shot out of the earth in small pipes, sometimes as little as 5 meters, little 15-foot wide pipes that shoot out material from the mantle. And based on the expression of the diamonds and the cooled minerals within the pipe, the amount of pressures are unprecedented. And these kimberlite eruptions have erupted into space, showering space with diamonds that then rain down on Earth. So kimberlite eruptions are known. They're geologic phenomenon. They're all over the world. There are tons of pipes in the Rockies, right where I am, the Kimberley diamond mine, etc., where diamond pipes exist. And the whole control narrative on the price of diamonds is controlled by De Beers and the money funders that control these assets. The fact is that there are hundreds of billions of trillions of carats of diamonds throughout the universe, and they're not rare. Yet, the money funders on Earth are creating a pinch point to make them rare and make you buy them for inflated prices. Same with silver, gold, copper, and all precious metals. There's almost an unlimited resource. And what I grew up knowing as I became a geologist and an environmentalist is that these resources were quite limited and we're going to run out. But when you do the research, that's not true. These are all renewable resources. Precious metals are renewable, just like oil and gas. But they claim that solar, wind, and water are the only renewable resources, which, by the way, would take 2 or 3 times more burning of fossil fuels, quote unquote, which are not fossil fuels, to create the same amount of energy. It's going to be a very dark winter coming soon because of the policy set by criminal governments that are trying to depopulate the earth, period. I'm about to get demonetized here. Pete Yeager, subscribe to Diamond's other channels, Oppenheimer Ranch Project and Sacred Geography. We appreciate that. Asphera says, tonight Timcast was amazing. He's going to have a chief cook in the kitchen for the after hours show. Well, that means that he's making a little too much money, doesn't it? Kristen Adams, one of our top fans of the show for a while. She's gone missing and she's back. Beautiful. Magnetic Reversal News. Tim's show is awesome tonight. I haven't finished it yet. It's good to see that the people who are fans of the show know where to get the real information. That's really what I'm getting from this podcast tonight, and I appreciate it. Kristen's always been a big fan of Tim. Yeah, I worry about him too. Yeah, I don't believe half the shit he says. And some of the people he has on his podcast, like Ian, are completely delusional. But they They bring out a broad-based knowledge from perspectives that we don't get to see in the mainstream. And I really appreciate that. The doctor's view says, considering the strength of the Carrington event in 1859, if that were to happen today, with the current weakened state of the magnetosphere, how would the scenario be different? Well, if you just watched the podcast with Tom Nelson, I was very clear on what my current understanding of all of the peer-reviewed papers and what we know about the last, let's say, 10,000 years of solar outbursts. There have been at least 5 solar outbursts or solar energetic proton events, which are so severe, they would eclipse the Carrington event by 140 times to up to 100,000 times. So the Carrington event isn't a unique thing. They happen all the time. But in the last 10,000 years, we've had 5 solar outbursts, which some people like to call micronova. But there's no need for that term. The sun outbursts in major ways all the time. And there are 5 events in the last 9,000 years in the Holocene, which eclipse the Carrington event by a factor of 100 and go much higher. So these are not unique events. They happen all the time. This is what humanity has been experiencing forever. That's why we never get anywhere. And this technological society with transhumanism and the internet of things and et cetera, and all the monitoring and shit is all going to fail in an amazing, bombastic way, which is glorious because most people are clueless and they think it's going to continue forever until we're all like some kind of like quantum computer aliens that live forever. Nah. Very few biological entities in the universe are allowed to get to that level. You're controlled by the pinch point. You're controlled by the sun. You're controlled by your local environment in the universe. And our sun is a pissed off, unhappy Z-pinch, which is controlled by the central Z-pinches in the Milky Way galaxy, which are very angry. And they send off a wave, a resonance of angriness. Wow, wow, wow. And every 26,000 years, we get fried. And every half cycle, something occurs. I've seen this in the rock record. It has nothing to do with crustal slip and Charles Hapgood or all that nonsense. But the cosmic catastrophe that occurs is so severe and pervasive that it causes mass extinctions. And it causes the erasure of everything we've worked for. You think that the burning of the books at Alexandria matters? No, this is different. These events erase all traces of everything that was ever known. And so what we're dealing with now, the toothpicks of our history, including Göbekli Tepe and other sites just unearthed, are a mere pittance of the reality of the history of humanity, period. And we can prove that based on everything I just said. There's been historical analysis by many exquisite scholars, including many that are claimed conspiracy theorists. And they have proven that our history has been erased in such a way that the information we know now about the last 100 years is barely 10% correct. And if you go back from 1800 to 1900, 1% of that information is actually correct. And prior to 1800, almost 0% of that information is correct. That's how much we know. Nothing. The most important thing that I know is that I know nothing. And I hope that you realize the real lies that these eyes have seen for decades.